Hello, in this video I'm going to be talking about the sum method built into arrays in ES5 JavaScript and beyond. So I have some sample data here. I have two number arrays and an array of objects with total and method properties. So these are my orders at a restaurant or something like that. So first, let's talk about how we can accomplish the logic of the sum method without using the sum method. So what is the sum method? The sum method is a method that will return true or false. It returns a single answer, either true or false, and the answer is to the question, do some of the elements in this array match this condition? Do they pass this test, this predicate? That's what we're going to call it. So I've written a function called isArrayEven, and in this function it takes a single parameter called array. And the test is going to be evenness, right? Is this number in the array, is it even or odd? And I'm using TypeScript, so that's why you see this type annotation here. If you're not using TypeScript, don't worry about it. Just ignore this part. Just use ARR as your standard JavaScript function parameter. So I've written a loop here that's going to go through the array that we're examining. And remember, our goal is to say, is it true, like, is the answer yes that some elements in the array match this condition? So not all, all would be every. That's a different ES5 array method. So we're just worried about some. So what that means as far as like effort goes is that as soon as we find one item that passes this truth test, that passes this condition, then we can immediately stop work and say we have our answer. The answer is yes, the answer is true. It is true that there are some elements in this array that pass this test. So I've written this method, this function, accordingly. So I have my for loop, and for every item in the array, I say, I don't know why I put set1 here. This needs to be ARR. So for the array, the current position in the array, let's mod it by 2 and see if that result is equal to 0. So let's divide by 2 and check the remainder. If the remainder is 0 after you divide by 2, then by definition, that is an even number. So if we encounter an even number, we're going to return true. That's going to prematurely stop the execution of this for loop. We're going to immediately break out of the function. So isArrayEven is going to say, all right, I'm done. I don't even need to continue. I have my answer. True. Some of these elements pass this test. If we never encounter one that's even, we never go into this if statement, which means we never hit this early return. So we're going to keep going. The for loop will conclude, and then at the very end, we'll return false, because at that point, well, we never encountered an even number. We never encounter something that passes this truth test. So we're just going to return false, saying, no, it's not true that some of the elements pass this truth test. In this example, the truth test is the number even. It can be any truth test, though. So that's how we would have to do this without using the sum method. We'd have to write a loop and do all this logic ourselves. So how can we use the sum method? Well, it's a method built into arrays, so you start by using the variable that contains the array. So in this case, we're dealing with set1, our sum values in set1 even. So I'm going to say set1. Well, it's going to return an answer, so let answer equal set1.sum. And the sum method takes a callback function as its argument. For this callback, I'm going to be using an ES6 arrow function. So in this arrow function, the first parameter is going to receive the current value. So this callback is going to be executed for every element in the array. So in this case, that's set1, but it's whatever array you invoke sum on. So if we have 10 items in the set1 array, then this callback method, this callback function I'm writing, will be executed 10 times. So at a minimum, you just need the value, but you can get additional information by having additional parameters. JavaScript's going to provide you with the index. So we can put index or just I. And finally, the third parameter is going to be the entire array. Maybe you need to know how many items are in the array for some reason. So if you need that information, this is how you get it. The first one is always going to be the value, the second one's going to be the index, and the third one is going to be the entire array. But I only need the value for what we're going to do. Okay, now in here, in this callback function, this is where you perform your truth test. And you return true if the item passes the truth test, or false if the item fails the truth test. Okay? And as soon as we return true, sum will prematurely end and say, I have my answer. All right? Some of the items return true. We have that guarantee. So I'm going to do this more verbose the first time. So I could say like, if val mod 2 is equal to 0, then we're going to return true. I'm not going to use an else, okay? I'm only going to return true. Well, you could do return false here. So if we go into the if statement, we return true. If we don't go into the if statement, we return false, basically. So that's going to mark this item as saying it passed the truth test. This is going to mark the item as saying it failed the truth test. And if we go through and we fail the truth test on every single item, then answer is going to end up being false. But if we pass the truth test on one single item, answer is going to be set to true. So that's how that works. So that's the long way of doing it. I'm going to go ahead and shorten this just a little bit to just one line. We're going to say return val mod 2 is equal to 0. All right, so why is this exactly equal to this? Well, this is a Boolean expression. It's going to evaluate to either true or false. So if this is true, that means the number's even. And then, so if this is true, we're saying return true. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're saying if literally the same expression is true, return true. So it's kind of like this weird extra step that we're doing for no apparent reason. So why not get rid of that and just say return and then the value? Okay, and likewise, if this evaluates to false, then we're returning false. Okay, so let's go ahead and console log this answer, and we'll keep going and go ahead and do answer equals our sum values in set2 odd. So for this one, I'm going to do set2.sum, and I'm going to get my value and return val mod 2 is equal to 1 in this case. So what did I do here? This looks a little weird. This is an ES6 arrow function shorthand. I'm actually using two of them. On the left-hand side of the arrow, if you're only using one parameter, you can drop the parentheses around the parameter list. So that's what I've done. So instead of the weird parentheses here around val, it's just val. On the right-hand side of the arrow, if you are returning a value, this is an implied return shorthand. So by dropping the curly braces, whatever you put to the right of the arrow function will be returned by this callback arrow function. So literally these two things are exactly the same. Well, not exactly the same because this one's checking for even, right? We have the 0 here, and this one's checking for odd. But structurally, I mean, you see what I'm saying. This was transformed into this. If I were doing an even test again, I would put 0. Now these literally are exactly the same, just two different ways of writing it. But I want to see if when dividing by 2, when the remainder is 1. So that is when the number is odd. So again, this is returning either true or false, and that's whether it's passing the truth test or not. So let's go ahead and console log the answer here. All right, let's go ahead and run this code. Now I'm using TypeScript. I have a custom build process set up, so don't worry about what you see here. Just worry about the code, the actual code that I've highlighted here. This is code that will work on the front end in the browser in a normal JavaScript file or in Node.js. So the first answer that we're logging are some values in set1 even. Let's take a look at set1. All right, right there, the very first one is 2. That's an even number, so true. Some values in there are even. The next question was, are some values in set2 odd? So let's take a look at set2. Is this one odd? No, no, no. So we never encountered one that passed the truth test, right? We never encountered one that passed the truth test. Are you odd? So because of that, the entire function returned false. The answer was false. Finally, this last one here are some of the orders paid with cash. So let's take a look at this. Here's our orders array. It's an array of objects with total and method properties. So we want to look at the method property. So is it true that all of them paid with cash? Well, we can look and see that it's not, but let's write some code to tell us that. Oh, are some of the orders paid with cash? All right, so the answer is actually going to be true. So answer equals orders.sum. And I want to return, my truth test is going to be, is the order.method equal to cash? All right, so again, shorthand, here's my order, my current value. Right here it was called val, but I mean, this could be called val too. It's whatever you want to name it. It makes sense to call it order here because it's an array of orders. And then I'm returning this answer. Is order.method equal to cash? Okay. So order is one of these, .method is going to be card or cash. So let's go ahead and console log this. And I'm going to run my code again. And this time for the last answer, I got true. Because remember, this returns true if even one of them passes the predicate, passes the truth test. And if we take a look at it, the very first order, its method is cash. So it actually didn't even continue on. It just gave up right here and said, I have my answer. So that is how the sum method works. This is pretty useful. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoy using the sum method.